The Insomnia Connection to Poor Mental Performance. Chapter 1. How Insufficient Sleep Affects Memory. We always feel better when we get a good night's rest. Adequate sleep gives the body the opportunity to get rested and recharged. It appears that adequate sleep may also be vital to the ability of the brain to learn and access memory. While we sleep and the body is at rest, the brain forms memories processed from the day's experiences. Sleep plays a very important role in learning and memory according to behavioral studies and imaging that is being carried out. It is believed that learning and memory are affected by sleep in two ways. Our ability to stay focused and learn efficiently is impaired by a lack of sufficient sleep. For a memory to stick so that it can be accessed and recalled in the future, sleep is imperative. Memories are categorized into three different types. We have those that are fact-based, such as recalling names of a series of things, like the names of European countries. Other memories are based on life events or episodic, like the first time you sat behind the wheel of a car. And then there are memories that are instructional or procedural, and seem to be stored at least partially in muscle memory, such as how to type, or knit or crochet, or play a guitar. There are three functions that need to occur in order for something to get stored in memory. 1. Acquisition. A new learning or a new experience is introduced. 2. Consolidation. The new memory gets stabilized within the brain. 3. Recall. A memory, conscious or unconscious, is able to be recalled or accessed in the future. Each of these functions is necessary for memory to successfully take place. It is while we are awake that the functions of acquisition and recall take place. But for consolidation of a memory of any type, it is believed by researchers that sleep is required, during which neural connections that create memories are strengthened. The process is not fully understood, but some researchers believe that specific brainwave characteristics at the various sleep stages are linked to particular types of memory formations. The brain struggles to absorb and recall new information without adequate sleep. Adequate sleep is needed for good physical reflexes and fine motor skills. It is also needed in having good judgment. Sleep-deprived patients in one study thought they were correct when they were actually wrong. In memory testing studies, people who have a nap or a single night of good sleep perform better on tests, doing physical activity, or playing music. It's not well understood how exactly sleep helps memory. Scientists think it involves the hippocampus and neocortex of the brain. This is the part where the storage of long-term memory takes place. It is believed that while the subject is sleeping, the day's events are replayed by the hippocampus, where they are reviewed and processed by the neocortex for long-term memory. Chapter 2. How Lack of Sleep Affects Learning. For optimal learning and memory function, it is essential to get adequate amounts of sleep. It is not fully understood how sleep, memory, and learning are interrelated. However, it is evident from studies conducted on animals and humans that the amount and quality of sleep impact memory and learning in very important ways. It's hard to separate out learning and memory, since learning depends upon remembering what you've learned. We know from research that learning and memory are affected by sleep in two specific areas. First, learning cannot optimally take place in a sleep-deprived individual because of his inability to maintain focused attention. Therefore, he is unable to learn in an efficient manner. Second, as mentioned earlier, sleep is needed for memory consolidation, which is necessary for new learning to take place. Researchers use a couple of methods for studying the role sleep plays in learning and memory formation. The first way is to monitor the response to learning a selection of new tasks during the various stages of sleep and the changes in the lengths of each stage. The second way is to observe how the various types of sleep deprivation affect learning. The deprivation can be total, where the subject is allowed no sleep at all, partial, where sleep deprivation during either early or late stage, or selective, sleep deprivation at selected stages. There are different types of memory required for different learning situations. Researchers are attempting to determine if a relationship exists between the different stages of sleep and consolidation of different types of memories. Early sleep and memory research studied fact-based information called declarative memory, such as factual things learned, like states' capitals. One study followed subjects learning an intensive language course. The subjects showed increased rapid eye movement, REM sleep, where dreams most often occur. It was hypothesized that to acquire learned material, REM sleep is essential. Later studies indicate that if information is emotionally charged and involved, REM sleep comes into play in the declarative, fact-based memory process, but unlikely if information is simple and not emotionally charged. More recent hypotheses indicate that the deep restorative slow wave sleep, or SWS, by consolidating information newly acquired, is largely involved in declarative memory. However, the link between declarative memory and sleep shows some mixed results, and more research is needed. With regard to learning new motor skills requiring coordination and performance, sleep is an essential ingredient. REM sleep appears to be critical in procedural memory learning consolidation, that requiring how to do a task, such as learning to drive a standard shift automobile or playing an instrument. Light stages of sleep are involved in motor learning, and the amount and duration of slow wave sleep, or SWS, and REM sleep affect certain kinds of visual learning. The sleep-deprived individual experiences a loss of attention and focus. Vigilance starts to drift, and information becomes harder to acquire. Overworked neurons can't coordinate information as they normally would, so access to previously learned information gets blocked. Chronic sleep deprivation affects our performance. Neurons may fire haphazardly and the body's muscles are not rested. Organ systems don't function harmoniously. As we lose focus, we can find ourselves prone to accidents and injuries. Mood is also affected in a negative way, and that can affect acquisition of new information and our ability to recall the learning that we've acquired. There's a split among researchers as to how significant is the impact of sleep deprivation on memory and learning. In rat studies, the rats who had been deprived of REM sleep selectively often showed worse performance on tasks they had learned. Researchers hypothesized that REM sleep is vital for memory consolidation of these tasks for the rats. But some have countered that the differences in learning may be due to the rats' overall lack of being well rested, rather than specifically due to lack of REM sleep. There is still much debate, but the bulk of the evidence from research suggests that adequate daily, good quality sleep is important for memory and learning. The different stages of sleep are involved with consolidation of different types of memory formation. Sleep deprivation plays a part in the reduction of one's learning ability. Chapter 3. How insufficient sleep affects the speed at which you execute mentally challenging tasks. Statistics gathered from the National Center for Sleep Disorders Research and the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration expert panel on driver fatigue and sleepiness, lack of sleep is the leading cause of vehicular sleep-related accidents and drowsy driving. Slower reaction times and reduced vigilance are the result from motorists who are driving while drowsy due to lack of sleep. They are hindered in processing information adversely affecting their awareness of hazards and to respond in a rapid and appropriate manner. Studies of moderate prolonged wakefulness, for example 20 to 25 continuous hours, performed in the laboratory yield impaired performance that is equivalent to or greater than intoxication levels that are unacceptable for driving or operating dangerous equipment. Many other studies also concur that long periods of wakefulness show a significant impairment of hand-eye coordination, speed and accuracy, memory and decision-making. Chapter 4. How sleep deprivation can affect your moral judgment and your ability to assess your own impairment. Inadequate sleep affects our interpretation of events. Sound decision-making is compromised as our ability to assess a situation with accuracy is diminished due to lack of sleep. We may fail to plan accordingly or to choose the appropriate behavior when judgment is impaired. Not getting enough sleep affects moral judgment, according to studies conducted at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. We seem to lose the ability to assess the appropriateness of certain actions in various situations. Our ability to integrate thoughts and emotions gets impaired, so we are no longer guided to do the appropriate thing. People getting 6 hours of sleep per night instead of the recommended 7 to 8 think they've gotten used to the fewer hours. They think they've adapted. But on mental alertness and performance tests, they actually are going continually downhill. They are losing touch with the degree of impairment they are suffering. Chapter 5. How insufficient sleep can lead to increased risk of developing mental illness. There's new research suggesting that psychiatric disorders such as post-traumatic stress, PTSD, attention deficit disorder, and depression could be caused by inadequate sleep. Here's an interesting case involving a woman who became convinced that her insomnia was directly responsible for her increasing downward plunge into a state where she actually felt her sense of sanity ebbing away. A woman named Louise, age 38, a copywriter and mother of 2 from North London, was first made aware of some of her own erratic behavior when a downstairs neighbor directly below her began banging on her door complaining about water pouring in from the downstairs neighbor's ceiling. Louise had forgotten to turn off her bath water, which was now overflowing, but even more significantly, she had no recollection of ever turning it on. Was this just a case of extreme forgetfulness, perhaps caused by a lack of sleep? Or was it a sign of mental illness caused by insomnia? An article in The New Scientist suggests the possibility that insomnia might have a direct link to mental illness. Louise was convinced that the insomnia was not a side effect of, but the actual cause of her mental state. She existed on only 4 hours sleep a night, relying on watching old films to make her sleepy. She was not just losing a night of sleep here and there, it became a consistent pattern every night in a relentless downward spiral. She began seeing things that weren't there, and her sanity felt like it was slipping away slowly but surely. She became obsessive-compulsive with trivial, repetitive actions like continually checking her Facebook account all through the night, craving some form of human interaction from the outside world, a desperation to have human contact. She finally got help with a prescription for antidepressants to combat her anxiety. A study conducted out of the University of California, Berkeley, involved showing increasingly disturbing images to 2 groups of participants, those who had normal sleep and those who were sleep-deprived for 35 hours. The amygdala of the brain, the center for emotions, showed approximately 60% more activity in the sleep-deprived group. Also, the amygdala and frontal lobe connection of the brain was disrupted. The frontal lobe puts the reins on the brain's emotions. The sleep-deprived group had much less control over their emotions. Chapter 6. How can you tell if you need more sleep? A May 2005 article in the British Columbia Medical Journal reported that physicians that were sleep-deprived had higher rates of error and greater difficulty performing various procedures such as laparoscopies and intubations. Electrocardiogram interpretations indicated the doctors had greater rates of error while performing in intensive care units. According to an article from the October 2007 issue of Neuropsychiatric Disease and Treatment, decision-making and long-term memory was adversely affected. It was also found that adverse changes in cognitive skills were linked to sleep deprivation. One of the hallmark signs that you're probably sleep-deprived, oddly enough, is if you fall asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow. If it normally takes you less than 5 minutes to fall into sleep, you are a definite candidate for needing more sleep. You're most likely sleep-deprived if you find your thinking getting fuzzy and unclear, if decisions take longer to make. Cognition and reaction time slow down with lack of sleep. If you find it hard to solve problems, or your understanding of facts seems to sail right over your head, or you can't come up with the right words to explain what you want to say, these are all signs of sleep deprivation. If your judgment seems impaired and you're making bad choices, all of these can be warning signs of inadequate sleep. Things are not clicking in the normal way they should. If you're falling asleep while driving, if while driving, for instance, you find yourself veering over into other lanes, that is a definite sign of lack of adequate sleep. This should sound alarm bells and warning klaxon horns should be blaring in your head. These are red flag wavers that you are in a very dangerous state and should take steps as soon as possible to correct your sleep deficit. Here are just some of the startling statistics that have emerged from the effects of insomnia on our population. A poll from the National Sleep Foundation states that the number of people admitted to driving while drowsy is around 60%, and out of that, as much as 37% admit to actually falling asleep while driving. According to statistics revealed from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Every year, approximately 100,000 accidents involving vehicles occur from drivers who are drowsy. It's estimated that 1,500 persons die in these traffic accidents annually. Insomnia affects over 30% of the population, and nowadays people tend to sleep fewer hours than they did 100 years prior. How much less? It's estimated that the population is averaging around 20% less sleep than they got 100 years ago. 1 out of 3 people at some point during their lifetime experience some form of sleeplessness. Stress and/or anxiety take a toll in sleep loss in over half the U.S. population, and 40 to 60% of seniors over the age of 60 deal with insomnia. It seems that women are twice as susceptible to experiencing insomnia than their male counterparts. If you suffer from depression, you are quite likely to get insomnia, as 90% of depression patients deal with it. 35% of people suffering from poor sleep show insomnia in their family history. You are 27% more likely to become overweight if you're a victim of insomnia. Sleep aids are prescribed to approximately 10 million Americans. In a Consumer Reports survey recently polled, the most frequently given reason a couple admitted for not having sex was that they were too tired. The Institute of Medicine revealed that hundreds of billions of dollars each year are doled out for sleep disorder-related medical expenses. Conclusion? Insomnia affects millions of people in all walks of life, and some groups are at an even higher risk at some point in their lifetime. It affects memory, learning, cognitive skills, speed and reaction time to motor responses, and mentally challenging tasks. It affects moral judgment and our ability to assess the level of our own impairment. It can even potentially lead to risk of developing mental illness if chronic and severe enough and left unchecked. The implications for mental impairment while experiencing sleep deprivation are real and pose a threat to our health and safety. Clearly, insomnia is an issue that should not be overlooked.